friends, welcome back to the Avocado Toast Budget. If you're new here, my name is Lexa, and welcome back to another Makeup and Money Talks Monday. Now, I guess this is like kind of money related, but not fully. I had asked a lot of you over on Instagram what questions you had about not only working for yourself and taking your side hustle full time, but especially working for yourself as like a social media content creator and influencer, whatever you want to call it. And I want to talk about those things and answer some of those questions, but I also really want to talk about just like burnout, because I am like in the midst of that. I think I'm like on the tail end of it. I'm coming back up out of it, but I've been really struggling with that lately. And I didn't feel like I could make this video without like being real about that and talking about that. And yeah, so it's not fully money related, but I feel like it's close enough. It's doing my makeup and ranting about something to do with money or business or whatever. And on top of that, I have posted a few videos. I'll like pop it up here using this makeup look, and I've had a lot of questions about it. I think I've done something similar already in one of these videos, but we're gonna do this exact one just in case you like want to follow along, and I will link everything that I use down below. In case you're wondering, the eyeshadow palette that I use that I like literally always get comments about is the e.l.f. bite-sized eyeshadow in Truffles. Sometimes I dip into their other eyeshadow palettes, like this one. This is the Mint Melt. No, that's the name of the eyeshadow palette. Chocolate Mint. But I mean, like the brown is pretty much the same. So it's really this one right here. This is where the money's at. And I will, of course, because I never wash my brushes, be using dirty brushes. Don't do that. Okay, so a little bit of background. About 2 years ago, I was actually working in the field of psychology doing therapy, and never in a million years would I have guessed that I was going to be a personal finance content creator. Back in January of 2020, I kind of hit like my rock bottom with my finances, and I've talked about that, and I'll link like more videos in case you're wondering. But I was not by any means always good with money. I really struggled with it, especially starting my senior year in college, and I actually got the idea to start the Avocado Toast Budget back in like May, June of 2020. I had been laid off, and during that time I pretty much did nothing except for like sit on the couch and watch personal finance videos online and kind of just like start to get my finances together. But it's funny that that's when I chose to do it, because Michigan's like unemployment system, and I think it was like this everywhere, but Michigan's was like extra fucked up, and I didn't get my unemployment money for like months. So I didn't actually have any income coming in. I was just learning as much as I could and dealing with like my finances with the money that I had left over. And I was also trying to tackle paying off $20,000 of credit card debt, which at that point I had actually paid off a good chunk of it, but I was really trying to make sure that I didn't go back into credit card debt, because that had kind of been my cycle beforehand. So once I got like hyper fixated on personal finance, honestly, I just like needed an outlet to talk about it, because I still felt a lot of shame around money and my debt and didn't want to like talk about it a lot with the people in my life. So I decided to start the Avocado Toast Budget as an anonymous blog, just to kind of like talk about it and talk about my journey and what I was learning, and try to put it in like the most relatable and like exactly what you need to know way possible, because that was what I really had wanted, and that is what I wanted to do with like this anonymous community. But I was still really afraid of like people in my real life knowing about it, and it didn't make money at all. Like I think I maybe had like 20 or 30 people who would like stumble across my blog on Pinterest or something, who would read it, but I didn't have like any active followers. But then in September, late September of 2020, I decided to start posting on TikTok, just because like that is how I consumed most of my content. So I just thought I would just start talking about the things that I was talking about on my blog. And it very quickly blew up. Within a month, I had 50,000 followers. Within 6 months, I had almost 500,000. So a lot happened during that time, and I think that's what people have a lot of questions about. So that's kind of what I want to hit on today. So when I started posting on TikTok in September, like I'd seen the stories obviously about like people blowing up on TikTok. I didn't think that that would happen, nor was that kind of like what I was there for. Again, I just kind of wanted to create a community on the platform that I used the most and kind of fill in the gap, because at the time there wasn't really a lot of people who were talking about budgeting in the way that I liked to talk about budgeting. There, of course, were like the crypto guys and like the people, the guys trying to sell you like shitty courses. But really, there weren't like a lot of people in that market on TikTok yet. There were tons of people on Instagram and who had blogs and on YouTube, but I don't think the personal finance space had really grown very much on TikTok at that point. I knew I was growing very quickly, but I don't think at the time it like really registered in my brain what was happening because it just was like so surreal. I remember sitting watching myself hit my first 1,000 followers and then my first 10,000 because then I was so excited because then I got to go live. And then I remember a month on the dot, I hit 50,000. And then after that, it just kind of exploded around Christmas and New Year's of 2020 going into 2021. And that was the kind of time that it was all a blur. Also, at this point, I again wasn't making any money off of the ATB until January of 2021. And at that point, I had blown up so quickly on both Instagram and TikTok that I went from not making any money, not doing any sponsorships. I was maybe making like a couple $100s a month off of affiliate money. And that was really like the way I was making some money, but it was like negligible compared to my expenses, which I didn't have a lot of expenses, but when you're only making a couple $100s, you're coming out in the negative. I think it's also important to note that at this point in time, TikTok, I just think, was like really pushing finance content of all kinds, which later ended up backfiring because then they just got a bunch of people on there scamming. And now I think it pushes down like specifically finance, budgeting, investing content, and it definitely doesn't hype it up the way that it was when I was first posting on TikTok, which really sucks because I think a lot of that is because of those like really scammy people who were on the platform. But I definitely think at the time my growth had a lot to do with how often I was posting. I was posting a lot, and I want to talk about burnout. This probably contributed to it. I was posting like 3 to 6 times a day on TikTok and going live like at least once a day. Sometimes I would hop on more than once. So I was making a lot of content. And at the time I was also making content for Instagram and I was making content for YouTube because I started my YouTube channel just a few months after I started my TikTok. So I was producing a lot of content and I still like, that's still my favorite part of it, but it was definitely not sustainable for the long term, especially once my brand started growing and I started having other things to do in the background, like answering emails, collaborating with brands, making my course, which took so much time. It was harder to keep up with that level of not only creating content, but consuming content, because I really think part of growing on TikTok is knowing what the trends are, getting on those trends quickly, making your own creative versions of it. And in order to do that, you have to consume a lot of content, which I was. Like I love TikTok and I was definitely a consumer along with a creator. And I really think that that helped me to grow because I was like one of the first people posting trends, but in like the personal finance space. And since TikTok was promoting that, it was getting pushed to the For You page over and over and over and over again for millions of people to see very quickly. So by February, I kind of realized that if I was going to continue to grow the ATV at the rate that I wasn't going to be able to do that alongside my full-time job because I was still working my full-time job. And that was around the time that I realized I was going to have to make a decision between if this was just going to kind of fade out and be something that I didn't do as much with it as I wanted to and still keep my full-time job, or if I was going to take the ATB full-time. So I ended up deciding by April, I had put in my notice at my job and did the ATB full-time. At that point in time, I was making $65,000 a year at my full-time job, and I was paying myself around the same from the ATB. So what that ended up meaning was that for a couple months, I was making a lot of money, but then overnight my income was basically cut in half. So one of the questions I got a lot was like, how did I know when it was time for me to quit my full-time job? How did I make sure I was financially prepared for that? For me at the time, my partner who I was with, we agreed that the way we did our finances was like we each put 30% of our income into a joint account and that covered our bills. So like what we had agreed upon was that if I had 6 months of my 30% contribution saved, just in case anything happened and I could still continue to put in my 30%, then I could quit my job. And because I was making a lot more money since I had those two bigger sources of income, pretty much one of them overnight, and our expenses were still really low. Like, we lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment that we paid like $800 a month for, and I had done a good job at like not inflating my lifestyle along with my income, because really like a year before that I was making less than $35,000 to $40,000. So luckily I didn't change my expenses or our expenses very much, so I was able to save that money very quickly. And looking back on this, like, that is what I felt comfortable with. I had both 6 months of our contributions and 6 months of like my own emergency fund, and before I quit my job. I still have 6 months worth of like paychecks set up for whatever reason. My income with the ATV fluctuates because it does a lot, like a lot, depending on the season, depending on a bunch of factors, depending on how many brand sponsorships that I take per month. And that just feels right to me. I don't think that there's like a set number that would work for everyone, but I do think when it comes to deciding to quit your job, if you are used to making income from a full-time job that's very steady on top of income that you're getting from a side hustle, and you're making enough money at that side hustle to consider quitting your full-time job, you have to remember that you're cutting your income by a lot, as well as cutting out that stability. And there's a chance that because you're putting more time and energy toward your business and your side hustle, that you'll make up that. But there's also a chance that it's gonna fluctuate, and I just wanted to be prepared for either situation. But honestly, at that point in time, I was so burnt out with my full-time job. I had known before I even graduated with my master's degree, which I graduated in March 2020, right before I started at the ATV, that this was not a field I wanted to go into anymore. But I had just gotten a master's degree for it. So, and the pandemic hit the same day I got my master's degree, I graduated. So I felt obligated to kind of see that through until I had a different route. And the ATV ended up being that different route. So once I quit my day job, in April, May-ish, my last day got so strung out for so long that I can't exactly remember when it was. Sometime around April or May. Hey friends, Editing Lexa here. I just wanted to hop on real quick and say that here in the next like couple of minutes, I'm going to just touch on my like experience with my abusive relationship that I was in. I don't go in depth or anything, but if that is something that you're sensitive to, I will leave timestamps if you want to skip that part, or I will just leave my other Makeup and Money Talk Monday videos down below if you would prefer to just watch those instead. I had already kind of gotten used to balancing like a lot of work, but also at the time, I was in what I did not realize then, but was kind of starting to realize was an abusive relationship. And I think for me, the ATV was kind of my outlet for that. I worked a lot because honestly, like I didn't have anything else to do. And that was like the one thing that kind of kept me going. Connecting with this community kept me going. It kept me feeling human, kept me feeling sane. It gave me something to feel like was my own. And also, I have the ATV to a credit to the fact that I was even able to leave that relationship, because I ended up, we like went on a break in June of 2021 and I was able to move back to my mom's house for a month. And I think having that space was the only thing that got me to realize how bad the situation was and feel safe to leave that situation. And I would not have been able to do that without the ATV and without a job that allowed me to work from anywhere. So I am like, this is a side note, but I'm like beyond thankful for that, because I don't know if I would have left if I wasn't able to get that space, and also if I wasn't able to have that financial security, because I had known that something was wrong and not healthy for years. But honestly, like in the back of my mind, it was always looming, like, if you leave, what are you gonna do? Because before this, I wasn't making a lot of money, but we lived in Metro Detroit where like it definitely was not a low cost of living area. We had kept our expenses low, but cost of living was higher. And by then, rent had started to go up, and I wasn't sure how I was gonna make ends meet without like permanently moving back home. And in that case, I had a job that I had to be at. So how was I gonna move from Michigan to Missouri, which is back home and where I'm at now? Now I have like my own apartment because I had that financial stability, but I wasn't sure that that was gonna be an option for me. So yeah, that was a side note, but I think it's important in this like whole story that part of the reason I honestly think I was able to dedicate so much time and energy without feeling that burnout then was that it was just kind of like my coping mechanism and my escape from reality. So on to like kind of talking about boundaries and burnout, because I think that that's a really common question, especially as an influencer, someone who works for themselves and also who like works from home, is how to maintain that work-life balance and not get burnt out, which I will 100% admit I'm great at in theory and great at in spurts, but sometimes it is just like really hard to maintain those boundaries, especially because I don't live in a house. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. So this apartment, the way it was set up, the way it was sold to me to be set up, would have been perfect for me having like my own room for filming, or like my own space for filming, which I do now kind of, like, because this is technically my living room, but I don't use it as like a living room. I use it as a filming space. And I have room that I'm kind of building over here, which is the dining room, that I want to be my filming space, but it's a work in progress. So since I moved here in October, that's kind of been my thing, is like, I just kind of hang out in my bedroom for like my downtime. And this is like my workspace, even though in theory, I was hoping this to be like my live space. But I will say, like, establishing those boundaries is one of the hardest parts, I think, of working for yourself, and especially of working on social media, because for most of us, social media is our escape. Social media is our thing away from work. So when it starts to become both your personal life and your job, it's really hard to separate those two. And I found myself just like constantly in work mode, and it's really hard to like shut off that side of my brain, because even if I'm just scrolling on TikTok for just like myself, like my enjoyment, I'll find a video that like sparks an idea, and then I'm like, oh, I need to save this sound, I need to write this down, I need to remember that like I want to film this. So it's just kind of like a constant ticker running in the back of my mind. Content creators are starting to talk more about this, which I think is so important, but it's really hard to imagine until that's your reality, just how hard it is to kind of shut off that working part of your brain. And because of that, I think I just like hit a point where I got really, really burnt out, especially because all of 2021, I was working on designing and launching my course, which I love and I'm so excited about, and I put so much, I love it, but it was so much more work than I thought it was going to be. It started off as like what I thought was just going to be a mini little ebook kind of project, something simple to give to people to say like, here's where to start. And then I just realized that like there was so much more I wanted to add, and it turned into a very large like master personal finance 101 course, which I love and I'm so excited that I had, but I definitely didn't plan out my time expecting to do that. So during like the entire month of December, I pretty much worked from the time I woke up until like 3 a.m. on my course. And I would make content and do like those things in between, but I was working like 7 days a week nonstop on that in order to get it out by the beginning of January. And it was a lot because I had never done it before. I didn't realize all of the behind the scenes work that happens other than just like designing the course. And it was definitely a learning experience for sure. And it definitely contributed to big feelings of burnout, of just feeling like I had hyper fixated for so long and so many hours getting it out, that once it was out, it was like, oh, like my body just needed a break. My body and my mind and my soul. And I thought I had like given myself enough of one, but then going into February, I just kind of hit this wall where it felt really hard to be creative. Like I found myself not being creative. I used to constantly be thinking of ideas and coming up with ideas that I was so excited about for content to create and TikToks to make. And it was like a wall, like a writer's block, but for social media content creating. And because I wasn't like coming up with ideas so naturally, and that creative side of me just was feeling so blocked, that also contributed to making me feel even more burnt out, because I was just like frustrated with, why is this happening? Why do I feel such a block? And I knew it was because like my brain was constantly in work mode, that at some point that was going to happen, but I couldn't find a practical way to like find that balance before it was kind of like too late. And it wasn't that I like wasn't excited to create content, because I was, but then I would sit down to create content and I couldn't think of anything or I wouldn't have thought of anything before. I used to have like endless notes of ideas, and I always felt like there was never going to be enough time to create all of the content I wanted to create. And suddenly, even those ideas didn't sound inspiring to me, even though objectively they probably were like really cool ideas. And now now that I'm getting back into the mode of things, like they're good ideas and it's good content and it's things that I want to create. But you know, like if you've ever experienced burnout, you know that it just feels like everything just feels off. Everything just feels less than exciting. And I was really struggling with that in February going into the beginning of March. And I also think another huge part of that is that I for sure need a manager that helps me manage my emails and helps me to negotiate with brands, because my email just like absolutely overwhelms me. But it has proven to be a struggle to find someone, and to find the right person, find someone who like just flows with you and works well with you, and someone that you can like put that trust in. It's really hard, but it's something I definitely need. But you also need the time and energy to find that person. And I didn't have that either. And that's still a struggle bus I am on. I know that most people, I have 500,000 followers across all of my like platforms, more than 500,000. And at this point, most people would have like a team, which would be ideal in these circumstances. I have V and Kaylee who help me with like creating Instagram content and responding to DMs and doing some of that background work. But I need more help than that. And I definitely am at a place that in order to be able to function and get everything done that I want to do and achieve all I want to achieve with the ATB, I need more of a team and I need to start delegating. But I just kind of hit a point where I was so burnt out and I didn't feel creative and it just all felt so overwhelming that I didn't even know where to start looking for that help. Because again, I didn't go into this wanting to be a business owner. That was never my plan. I've always loved creating content for social media, but I had done YouTube in like the beauty space before this because I love YouTube. I love creating content, but I never saw myself as like a business owner, someone owning a full-on business. And it happened, like I said, like literally it went from being like, oh, this is an anonymous blog no one knows, to, oh, this is like a full-on business in a matter of a couple of months. And I'm still kind of figuring that out even a year later, because there's really not a handbook for this, as I have come to find out. And I was really good about keeping my expenses low, especially as I started out, which I think was so helpful. I'm so glad that I did that, because I had a tendency before this to like throw money into any new hobby, and I didn't want to do that with this one, just in case I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. So I kept my expenses, and still have kept my expenses pretty low. But because of that, I know that I'm missing out on a lot of growth and opportunity, because I'm not like reinvesting into people in my business and delegating things and projects and all of that. So that's definitely like a big goal for 2022, 2023. And I think that that's going to help a lot with the burnout too, because right now, other than some help with my Instagram, I do it all on the background, and I edit all of my YouTube videos. I am the one responding to comments and the one creating the content and coming up with content ideas and making my course, and I have more mini courses that I'm working on in the background, and there's just not enough hours in the day to manage all of that as one little person. And I'm doing all of my email stuff, which that got dropped off in February because it just overwhelms me so much to like see all of the emails I need to respond to. And that's definitely part of having ADHD as well. I've always struggled with this, with text messages, emails, anything. Like if I don't immediately respond, the more time that goes on, I think, oh, I'll respond to that tomorrow, and then I think, oh, maybe it's too late, and then it wouldn't have been too late if I just responded to the email or text message at that point. But then time just keeps going on, and then I just eventually don't respond to it, and then it just all feels very overwhelming. So I have definitely been riding the struggle bus with that as well. But I would say like February was probably the toughest month that I've had yet. I've had like little bouts of burnout, especially like last year when I left my relationship and was just doing the work to unpack all of that. And it wasn't so much burnout, it was just that like I was spending all of my time and emotional energy recovering from being in an abusive relationship and rebuilding my life. I had like burned down, that I still loved creating content. I just didn't have as much like emotional capacity and just time in general to do it as much as I was doing it. So it was a little bit of a different feeling than this latest like round. I feel like this is my first time I was like truly burnt out. So pretty much for like a good chunk of February, I was still like for probably 5 to 10 hours a week, spaced out a lot throughout the time, like still on Instagram mainly, like interacting with people and posting things, but I didn't scroll on TikTok very much. I didn't even scroll on Instagram very much. I didn't post on YouTube for that month. There were times that I wanted to, but I felt like I just needed to give my brain a serious break to like not be constantly thinking about creating content and constantly turning everything into a content creation thing, and just some time to like live. Like I read so many books in February because that was just kind of like my escape, because there was nothing to do with social media with that. And I honestly think like that was so good for me. It gave my brain the reset that it really needed, to be honest. Honestly, I feel like even though I see more content creators talking about burnout, it's something that a lot of us, at least from my experience, I think feel a little like nervous to talk about, because I know before I did this, you only see like the finished product. You only see, like any social media, what people want you to see. Like, and let's all be honest here, it's a lot easier to present an idealistic version of your life on social media than it is to really be real. And there's just not, you can't possibly show everything that goes on in the background. So I think that a lot of people don't take it seriously. And I will say, like, this is definitely like, I've worked at Starbucks. That's probably the hardest job I've ever had in my entire life, dealing with people. I'm not sitting here saying that this is just like an unbelievably hard job and woe is me. But I think because in social media content creating and being an influencer still kind of has that like, oh, you don't do anything, you just sit and talk on social media and talk to a camera all day kind of stigma to it. It's harder for, I think, us to talk about and admit when things get like really hard and when we do get burnt out, because we're afraid of how that's going to be perceived. And I get it. Like before I did social media, I'm sure in the back of my head I was judging like, come on, how hard could things possibly be for you? You're getting paid way more than is logical to post on a social media platform. And it's hard to see just like the emotional labor that goes into being available to millions of people almost constantly, and kind of like the effect that has on you and all of the stuff in the background that people don't see. And I think that I was scared to talk about it. I'm still kind of like scared to talk about this and scared to post this, even though I know it's important and I know that like what I was feeling and what I am feeling is real and valid. I would never want it to come across as like tone deaf or complaining, because I love my job. And like I said, creating content is something that like I've always loved to do and is literally the dream job. But like any dream job, it still has its moments and you can still get burnt out from it. And I think that that's the case with any job and not having those boundaries. But I just think that there's something extra to working from home and also just like working on social media, where it's very hard to, you can establish physical boundaries, but it's very hard to establish electronic boundaries. And I definitely think that that is an important aspect of this job that I did not see coming. And I still haven't really mastered on how to navigate that. And I think when it comes to having a side hustle or having any sort of like business or even just like hobby that you're hoping turns into a business, that's something that all of us struggle with, especially because even if your business isn't content creation, a lot of businesses have realized that content creation is an important part of being a business, having a side hustle, whatever it is, because social media is so powerful in that aspect of like getting people introduced to your product or your service and your business in general, that even if like my business is social media content creating, specifically just like personal finance, but there are other businesses that social media is not their business, but they still have to tackle how to incorporate that. And I think that that's just something that when it's just you and you're running your business by yourself, or you're a small business and you don't have a lot of people to delegate tasks to, it's hard to find those boundaries there. I look properly bronzed in person, but I don't feel like I look that. I feel like I look very washed out. And that might not be true, and I might be yelling at myself for applying more bronzer, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway. Oh, and then I kind of like touched on this toward the beginning. I have felt this for the last couple of months, and now I've been talking to other people and seeing other people in the personal finance space post about this, talking about how like it's kind of discouraging, because I don't know how many people would actually know this if you weren't a personal finance content creator, but like 6-8 months ago, maybe even more than that, maybe now it's closer to a year. Time doesn't exist in a pandemic. TikTok just kind of like slipped into their terms and conditions that you can't talk about any specific financial product or service. And it was just kind of like out of nowhere. I didn't even know there was no announcement. Like, they updated their terms of service and it just kind of like slipped in there in one little section. And I didn't even know about it until a brand who I was getting ready to collaborate with pulled out, because we could no longer do brand collaborations like that on TikTok. But it was also something that for the longest time, it was just kind of there. But like the way that TikTok works, they have this thing called like the TikTok Creator Fund and Marketplace, where they hook you up with brands. And like still to this day, TikTok through their own platform is trying to have me collaborate with financial brands. So like they're not even following their own policy. So for the longest time, it was something that was kind of there, but like kind of understood to be specifically meant for like those scammy MLM-y financial products, those crypto scams, the people promising overnight success, all of that. And then like a couple of months ago, all of a sudden, like posts that I had made back in 2020 were getting like flagged and removed from TikTok. Even just talking about like I had found a deal, it wasn't even sponsored. Like I'd found a deal on HelloFresh where you could basically try it for free using the Rakuten app, which is like a cashback app. And I had posted about it like back in 2020 before these guidelines were ever set. And that was taken down and I was flagged and I was like put on a hold from being able to post. And it just like rapidly started happening. So I had to go back through really quickly and like try to look over. And again, I was posting like 6 times a day for a long time. I have a lot of TikTok content, trying to go through and like private all of those videos. And then anytime that would happen, I got to this point that like one day, a few months ago, overnight, I went from, again, I have almost 500,000 followers on TikTok. I went from getting like an average of 20, 30, 40,000 views a video if it didn't like get picked up by the algorithm, to getting like 50 over like a day. Like, and it used to be like tens of thousands. It was very obviously like, I've never really believed people when they talked about like being shadow banned and all of that. I believe them sometimes, but a lot of times I just felt like it became a very common excuse to use if like you just weren't keeping up with trends or your content just wasn't performing as well. But I looked at like all of my statistics and my content was performing better than it like had been when it comes to like engagement. So that's how many people are commenting, liking, sharing, whatever, your post per either how many followers you have or how many people are viewing it. And that's usually how algorithms determine what content they're going to promote and what they aren't. It had nothing to do with that. It was just all of a sudden it wasn't getting shown to anyone. And it's very hard to continue to want to create content when, for a platform that like, I was one of the first handful of like personal finance creators in this like non-judgmental financial feminism budgeting kind of space that was really kind of growing that side of the platform for a while, to just get like decimated by the algorithm. It's really disheartening. And this would happen for like a few weeks at a time. I would try to dispute the claims. Sometimes they would put the video back up, sometimes they wouldn't. And then I started getting like consistently flagged for like bullying, harassment, all of those things on videos talking about like Dave Ramsey or other people bullying and harassing others. TikTok wouldn't respond to anything. Like they didn't care. They didn't care that it was like flagged incorrectly. And a lot of times that happens because people who don't like that I'm speaking out against Dave Ramsey will just go and mass report it. So TikTok just takes it down. And then again, I would get threats like, hey, if you have another video that violates our community guidelines, you might get banned from posting. You might only be able to view things. You won't be able to comment, whatever. And it really sucks because like I have screenshots of 3 or 4 times a day, I get a fake account made that will go through and spam all of my comments before I can even block them or respond to them. And TikTok has no good way of like mass deleting comments from someone. And all of those reports have gone unchecked for like a year, but they'll go through and like report bullying and harassment for talking about people bullying and harassing others. And it's just, it sucks, you know? It sucks. It sucks to feel like you're putting in a lot of time and energy into something and TikTok just isn't listening. And honestly, it just feels like they just don't care. And honestly, for a while, I was a little hesitant to talk about it because I, again, didn't want to come across as like someone who was blaming the algorithm for just making subpar content. But I knew that it was different. I could look at my analytics and see that something had happened. And then, like recently, my views have kind of like gone back up a little bit, but I also, knock on wood, haven't gotten flagged for anything recently. But I've heard like almost the exact same thing that I experienced is now happening to other creators that are in the same platform or in the same space on TikTok, and it's specifically on TikTok. And it's not like, I don't care if my videos get millions of views. Like, is that awesome? Yes. Is it so cool to like get more people in our community and introduce this to new people? Absolutely. It's why I do what I do. But I wouldn't complain if it was just being shown to like even just my followers, like even if it wasn't getting on the For You page, even if it wasn't performing, if I happen to create content that just like the algorithm wasn't pushing, it's fine. But when you have 500,000 followers and videos are getting 50 views, it sucks because then I get so many messages when like finally I get shadow banned or on whatever it is after like a month from people who are like, oh my God, like I haven't seen you in forever. I wasn't even showing up on people's like following pages. And it's just frustrating to feel so disconnected from the community that I love so much and that I spent so much time building up. Because the reality of it is that like TikTok is nothing without the creators who create content, who keep bringing people back to the platform. And it sucks as a creator to feel like taken advantage of and not valued in that way. When TikTok knows that this is an issue, they know across it's not just a personal finance thing, it's an everything thing. They have an issue with allowing terrible, awful content to go unchecked, stifling / allowing reports against people talking out about terrible, awful things. Like, I get almost daily threats against my life in my comments, and those go unchecked by TikTok. But then I get random videos that get mass reported, one about like why I like renting instead of buying, that ticks off a lot of people for some reason. That gets flagged almost every single time I post about it. And that's not violating the community guidelines. That is a bunch of people mad that I have a differing opinion, reporting it for something that it isn't. And then TikTok, despite it being a huge platform, having no reliable way to go through and like undo that. And it's so harmful. So yeah, anyway, that was a rant I was definitely not expecting to get in this video, but I think it definitely contributes to a lot of that feeling of burnout. Because I definitely knew that like that viral growth that I experienced at the beginning, it was gonna like not even necessarily tank, but just like even out at some point. Like you don't constantly go viral. And I was prepared and like I'm totally fine with that. But it's hard to continue to want to make content on a platform when like you're not even getting to interact with the community that you've built and talk freely about concepts that I think are very important to talk about, without fear that the thing that I've spent the last like going on 2 years building up is going to get taken from me permanently. Because right now my channel is at a risk of like me not being able to post on it. I've never been someone who created a backup account. I have a backup account on TikTok now because it's almost like I'm just counting down the days, despite the fact that like I listen to their community guidelines. I completely follow that. Like I don't talk about specific financial products anymore, despite the fact that they continue to still try to put me in partnerships with financial products and buy now, pay later services. I still listen, and it's just like the weirdest things that get tagged and taken down. But with all of that being said, creating content is still, and probably will, I mean, for the foreseeable future, continue to be the thing that I love to do the most and why I started the ATB in the first place. And I'm hoping now that like I gave my brain that rest, I'll be able to establish something a little bit better. I keep saying that like one of my goals is to have a separate like work phone and personal phone, but I think I'm like really gonna make that happen hopefully this week. I also have to deal with taxes, and this is my first time. This is the first year I've turned a profit, like 2021. So that's gonna be interesting, so I gotta get on that. But my hope is that establishing a routine that prevents burnout can be something that I focus on. And also just like getting the help and the resources that I need. And hopefully getting on more of a routine with YouTube as well. Because YouTube is just like a totally different beast. Like, it's completely different than Instagram and TikTok on the like planning and content creation category. Because with Instagram and TikTok, like really creating the content is the thing that takes the most time, like filming and maybe captioning, but honestly like filming and or creating like graphics, that's the thing that takes up the most time to create for that platform. For YouTube, editing by far is the thing that takes the most time, and it's definitely something I feel like I could invest in an editor, and I want to for sure at some point, because then I could actually create more content. Because in order to make like, and it depends, this video is going to take way longer to edit than something that's like a shorter video, but I could spend anywhere between like 8 to 16 hours a week just editing YouTube videos if I'm posting 2-3 times a week. And that is something that I recognize as like a job I could outsource. I also do YouTube because I love it and I do see the potential in it, and also I just like love, there are some things that are just so much easier explained in longer form. There's only so much I can explain over an Instagram post or an IG reel that it's so much easier to explain in a YouTube video. So I adore YouTube for that reason. But I also recognize that like editing is something that someone else could do. The only person that can create content is me, on, not in general, but like on the ATV. Like I am the ATV when it comes to like the face of creating content. And that's also what I feel like I'm the good at. Like that's my strong suit when it comes to my business, is coming up with ideas and then actually creating the content. And that's what I love to do because it's the part that I feel the most connected to the community I've built, all of you. So I know editing, it's on my list of things to outsource, but I don't make money really off of YouTube, maybe a couple $100s a month. But I also know that it's something that easily, if I invested in it and then could create more content, I would probably see the benefit, like the results of that investment. But again, it's something that like you have to find someone who you feel like you can trust and who matches your style and your vibe and who fits with like the mission here too, right? Because no matter who it is on my team, like I want the people who I work with to believe in what we're doing here. Okay, so I guess that is it for my unfiltered, chaotic mess of a rant about boundaries and social media and business and all of that. I really hope that you enjoyed. If you made it all the way here, you're the real MVP. If you relate to this or have any ideas or anything, comment down below, let me know. I would love to talk more about this with all of you. And yeah, that is it. So I will see you all next time. Bye. We need to be that up close, I guess. They say all's well that ends well. You ready, Dory? These eyelashes are just something else. That made me want to die. Boundaries, Dory. Boundaries.